So here's the ground tarp we're going to lay the tent down on. Again, this is the Quest 8-person cavern tent. Comes in a heavy bag. The bag itself isn't heavy, but the tent is. I would estimate somewhere around 40 pounds, if I'm guessing. But let's take it out and get it assembled. Setting up the tent, for the most part, you can do with one person. I'm just going to lay it out, kind of square off the corners, and put in the dome tent poles first. Once you get they cross in the center as an X. Once you get those in, and you tuck them into the corners of the dome pocket, then you can pop the dome shape, and there you go. And then from there you put the 4 corners up and the rest of the poles. Dimensions on the floor footprint are roughly 10 feet across in one direction by about 13 feet across in the other direction. So it's a huge footprint. That's one of the things I really like about this tent. The height in the corners where the dome is the lowest is about 6 feet and a few inches, or roughly 6 feet there. In the center where the dome is the highest, you're looking at around 7 feet. So more than enough headroom for me, and really nice that that's how high it gets in the center. Even at the lowest point, it's still pretty good. The rainfly is not much. That was the concern in the previous video in terms of how it might respond to rain and snow and wind. It's really kind of, it's not very long, and doesn't come out as far as I would like. So let's give it a little rain test here. We got a nice soaking rain that lasted at least one day overnight and the next morning. This is kind of not what I had hoped for, but it's pretty soggy in terms of the tent walls themselves, so I'll have to go into the tent when it's over and see what it looks like on the inside. But definitely from the outside you can see it's soggier looking, it's wetter looking than I would have liked on the sides. The rainfly is keeping it off the roof, but I think it's getting on the sides and into the tent, is my guess. We even got a little bonus snow that night, so you can see how the snow kind of hangs on it and how that falls off as well. Just not something I'm accustomed to doing, but since we were field testing it, we got lucky with some snow, so we get to see a little bit of that. And all of this was followed by a nice little windstorm, so actually dried it off pretty good on the upper parts of the tent. So you can see with the wind blowing, it's starting to look a lot less soggy and starting to look, like it's airing it out pretty good actually. So the big question is, did it take on water? Well, let's go in and find out. So we left a few sleeping bags in there as part of our field test, and a couple pillows and some chairs, and we'll see what we got. Unfortunately, yes, there are some pretty good pockets of water here on the floor. The walls themselves are starting to dry out, and they're actually kind of, to the touch, the walls are, pretty dry, if you will, compared to what I'm seeing on the floors here. It looks like all the corners have little, well, not all the corners, most of them have pockets of water. Again, the walls are starting to dry out first from that wind, which is, probably what you'd expect from the way the tent is structured. It's really disappointing, though, that the water's coming into under the floor here. Now, I'm not sure if it's coming through the bottom in terms of the tarp is wet as well, or if it came in through the walls and added up. But my guess it's a little of both, because there's quite a bit of it. Pretty much anywhere where there's something pushing down on the floor, or if it's a corner, you can see little pockets of water, little drips of water here on the cot. Not too bad. The part of the blanket that was hanging over the cot, touching the wall, that was pretty damp. It wasn't thoroughly soaked, but it was pretty damp. The rest of the blanket was fairly dry, as long as it was up on the cot. The pillow in the corner took on quite a bit of water there. So yeah, you can see no noticeable rips or tears in the walls. The windows were all up. The window coverings were all up. I think they did as good a job as they can do at keeping the water outside. But I think it's going to come down to either the ground conditions and or a combination of that and the rain fly. Because there is a lot of water in here, a lot more than I expected to see. I'm just glad our stuff isn't all over the floor, because it would have just transferred right into it, like duffel bags and clean clothes and all that good stuff. And again, the walls they're relatively dry compared. They're a little damp, but they're not at all like what we're seeing on the floor. I think that's probably by design and also thanks to the windstorm that's coming on, because it's really doing a nice job cleaning it out, or drying it out, I should say. Just a quick look up at the dome. So underneath, looking up through the screen, you can see the rainfly has the water beaded up on top. I don't see any signs of it coming through the ceiling. In terms of the center of the floor is pretty dry. Just seems to be where there's anything in the floor. So a few things I would need to do to really take this out into the wild. I would have to dig a nice trench around it. I would want some dry turf, preferably something that's quick drying like sandy. And I'd want to correct the biggest error I made in the setup, which was I attached the rainfly bottoms to the poles rather than stake them far away from the tent, which probably didn't help things and probably led the water right down to the bottom underneath the tent. So next time I would want to stake those out well away from the tent walls and poles to help draw the water away. So with a little more preparation and planning, we may be able to correct these water issues that we're seeing here. That's the only negative about this tent. Everything else about this tent is absolutely enjoyable. And as a reminder from the first video, when the weather's nice, the tent is so relaxing to be in and so much room in it. So it's really kind of disappointing to see it take on so much water. But hopefully this answers everybody's questions that they posted to the first video. And thanks again for watching, and thanks most of all for commenting. I really enjoy the comments. If you have any other questions, feel free to comment below.